It's opening day of rifle season 2019. I'm going to be going out into the big woods and I'm going to try to cut a buck track. I've been looking forward to this day for quite a while, so pretty excited. As you can maybe hear, I've got a little bit of a cold going on right now, so hopefully that doesn't mess me up too bad when I'm trying to close the distance on a buck and hacking up along at the same time. But we're just going to get cranking here and get going, start driving some roads, and if the roads don't pan out, if I'm not finding any good tracks by about 8, 9 o'clock, then I know a certain area that I'm going to dive into back deep in the woods. It's going to be right along a marsh. Hopefully I'll be able to find something in there. So the snow's kind of janky today. It's like a really powdery kind of snow. So it's going to be really hard to distinguish what a track really is and what it looks like. But you can't be too picky because honestly, as a deer tracker, it's all up to what the snow conditions are going to be. But you know, if I got snow, I'm going to try it. So I'm really hoping that this year I can finally have my very first successful buck tracking. So we'll stay tuned, and it's going to be an exciting day. Now on this hunt, the snow conditions were very poor for tracking. The snow was really crumbly and the tracks would just kind of disintegrate in it, so it wasn't really easy to tell if there was a good, fresh, crisp track. And add into that, we had not had a fresh snowfall in a few days. So there was lots of tracks all over the road and none of them looked fresh. So in order to determine a fresh track in this scenario, I was watching where the track was crossing a road. And more specifically, I was paying attention to if that track was on top of the tire tracks on the road or if the tire tracks were driving over it. Generally speaking, if you're going out at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, there's probably not going to have been a ton of other people driving out in the big woods. So you find a track that's crossing over top of all the tire tracks on the road, and it's probably a fairly fresh track. So after driving a few hours, I finally cut a really nice buck track. All right, so I'm going in on this track here. It looks like a pretty good one. I measured, and it's, 2.5, 2.25 wide, which is pretty good. And then if you look at this one here, the dew claws, almost 3 inches. So that's a big boxy track. And interestingly, this is in a spot that I had a big buck on trail camera last year. I tried running some cameras on him a little bit this summer and into the fall a little bit, but I didn't have any luck getting him on camera. But this is the exact spot where I first found the tracks of this buck going across. So I think that means it might be him. Which, if that's the case, this dude is a slammer. He had this big tine coming right off of his base, and then he had another kicker coming off his other base. He was just a beautiful buck. Stud of a deer. So if he's still alive and this is him, no guarantees that it is him, but if it is him, that'd be real exciting. It's about 7:30 right now, so I'm gonna get after it. About this deer that tells me for sure he's a buck. Let's look at all the dribble spots of pee. Okay, all along here. He's just kind of peeing as he walks. That's definitely a mature deer. That's a real good look at his track there. You can see the big dew claws. But there's a big wolf
Okay, so this buck just did the loop-de-loo here. If you can see, my truck is parked right up there. He circled all the way around back in there and came out right here. And interestingly, where this track is where I found a track 2 years ago in the exact same spot. I put up a camera out there about 120 yards that way, and I got that slammer on camera there. So this dude is doing the exact same thing as what that buck was that I had on camera 2 years ago. So, as you can see, that track is pretty spectacular. You know, with the gloves on, I mean, that is a monster track. Okay, and then that's where I see the first track there. And then he goes in here, so it looks like he's a little ways ahead of me yet. You can see that's where he jumped over that log. Well, this is pretty crazy. His tracks are headed right here. This is the tree right there where I had that buck on trail camera, right in that spot right there. I think it's gotta be him.
So as the morning progressed, I kept following this track, and with the older snow conditions, it really made it tricky to follow this deer. He was going into some really tall grass. He went into a slashing, and while he was in the slashing, he's feeding, and there's other deer tracks everywhere, and it just got really messy really quickly. So what I ended up deciding to do was make a big loop around the slashing. So I did that, made my way all the way around it, and I could not decipher where his track went from there. There was deer trails coming in and out of the slashing all over the place, and he just got jumbled in with everything else. So I decided that just for time's sake, it just would not work for me to sit there and decipher that out for the rest of the day. So I decided to pull the pin on this deer, but I did learn a couple valuable lessons with this hunt. The big takeaway that I got from this hunt is that sometimes trail cameras can be misleading. I didn't get that deer on camera that fall, and so I had abandoned that area for hunting. But just through driving the roads and cutting this buck's track, it confirmed to me that either he or another different mature buck was in that area. I'm pretty confident though that had to have been the same deer because he followed the exact same pattern. That leads into my second takeaway from this hunt is that yes, it's the big woods, but deer do follow the exact same paths year in and year out. They have their travel routes that they prefer. Interestingly, when I had scouted out that area this past spring, I found that there was a rub line that was coming along the edge of the slashing where he crossed that road. So he had been doing the same thing the year before. That's where I found his tracks the year before. And then now I am getting his tracks that fall in the exact same location within inches of the original spot. So yes, big woods deer do have certain tendencies and patterns and travel routes. And another thing that's interesting to note is that there were never other deer tracks crossing in this area. It was simply the spot that he liked to go. I never saw other deer tracks there. And so that's some of the value of following bucks. You learn a whole lot about some of their patterns and tendencies and even the personality of a deer. You learn something about that. I'm really hoping that you guys enjoyed this video today and that you will be sure to follow along with more of my hunting content this fall. So be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.